Hey folks, welcome back to Aircraft Adventures. Today, we're looking at 5 jets that aim for success but barely got off the ground. And the last one is probably one of the most creative jet transformations anyone's come up with. Let's go! Some jets are designed to dominate the skies, while others never even get off the ground. Figuratively speaking, of course. The Diamond D jet falls squarely into the second category. If you watch volume 1 of my series, you know the world of business jets is full of bold ideas that didn't quite pan out. Well, here's another one that had all the potential but ended up in history's dustbin of aviation flops. It was built by Diamond Aircraft, best known for their light planes like the DA-20, DA-40, and DA-42. The D-Jet was their ambitious leap into the personal jet market. Instead of competing with big-name business jets like Gulfstreams or Bombardier, Diamond wanted to create something smaller, more affordable, and easy to fly. A private jet for private owners, not just corporate executives. The D-Jet was powered by a single Williams FJ33 turbofan, pushing out around 1,900 pounds of thrust. That gave it a solid cruise speed of 315 knots and a service ceiling of 25,000 feet. Not record-breaking, but definitely appealing for pilots looking to upgrade from a piston or turboprop aircraft. It had a range of 1,350 miles, making it a great choice for short regional hops. And its modern Garmin avionics made flying more enjoyable for pilot owners. The D-Jet's fuselage was so clean and efficient that it can glide for more than 65 miles from its 25,000 foot ceiling. What I find cool is how, in spite of its modern touches, it had sort of an old school look to it, especially with the wing intakes. A little bit like the Cessna T-37, don't you agree? A key player emerged who had a key interest in the D-Jet: Canada. Diamond set up shop in London, Ontario, and Diamond in turn was counting on a loan from the Canadian government, in addition to tax breaks. It was supposed to be a game changer, a simple, low-cost entry into the world of private jets. But as we've seen with so many other jets, good ideas don't always turn into success stories. The Diamond Jet's downfall wasn't due to a single major flaw, it was a mix of bad timing, financial struggles, and stiff competition. Development took longer than expected, costs kept creeping up, and by the time Diamond Aircraft was ready to push forward, the market entered a nasty recession in 2008. So the company decided to focus all their efforts on their piston engine airplanes. Making matters worse, the Canadian government withdrew its support, and that was likely the last nail in the coffin. The D-Jet project eventually ran out of steam, and despite a handful of prototypes being built, the project was cancelled around 2010. Now, let's talk about a jet that really tried to stand out and maybe a little too much for its own good. The Piper PA-47 PiperJet was Piper Aircraft's bold attempt to shake up the very light jet market. In the early 2000s, private aviation was changing. VLJs were gaining traction, offering a more affordable way for pilots to transition from piston engine planes into jet ownership. The Eclipse 500 and the Cessna Citation Mustang were all making waves, and Piper decided to seize the opportunity to compete with something truly unique. But instead of starting from a clean slate, they used the tried and true Piper Malibu for their foundation. But the engine configuration was anything but tried and true. Instead of following the industry standard twin engine layout, they took a different approach. One engine mounted on the tail. Kind of like a DC-10 or a TriStar, just a lot smaller. Sounds risky? Well, it was. But the idea was simple. A single engine business jet meant lower cost, reduced maintenance, and easier operations. On paper, the PiperJet had a lot going for it. It was designed to cruise at 360 knots with a range of 1,300 nautical miles and a service ceiling of 35,000 feet. The spacious, pressurized cabin could comfortably seat up to 6 passengers. Piper marketed the PiperJet as an ideal step up for owners of turboprop aircraft like the Pilatus PC-12 or their own Piper Meridian. The company believed that by simplifying jet ownership, they could carve out their own niche in the VLJ market. Also on paper, the unique engine setup offered some advantages. In the event of an engine failure, the fragments wouldn't blow up in the passenger cabin. Also, with the tail that far up, you remove the possibility of debris getting blown into the engine, which was a challenge faced by McDonnell with their Model 220 business jet. But in real life, the setup had some serious drawbacks too. A single-engine jet for business aviation was a rare concept, and for good reason. Twin engines just aren't about redundancy, They provide better performance, stability, and safety in case of an engine failure. With PiperJet's engine mounted high up on the tail, it also created a major center of gravity challenge. If the engine failed, pilots had to deal with major handling issues, making it harder to fly in an emergency. And of course, the most obvious drawback, there's no backup engine to keep it flying. Piper tried to address this by modifying the design, including a stretched fuselage and weight redistribution, but every tweak added cost and complexity, moving the jet further away from its affordable status. By 2011, Piper had poured millions of dollars into the PiperJet, later renamed the Altair, but factors beyond Piper's control spelled the end for the hapless PiperJet. The global recession had hit private aviation hard, and buyers who once showed interest in VLJs were nowhere to be found. With no clear path to profitability, Piper made the tough call. The project was canceled. It's a shame, because the idea of single-engine jets actually panned out pretty well for Cirrus, and the Cirrus VisionJet is the only player competing in the single-jet engine market. And as we'll see, the PiperJet wasn't the only business jet that couldn't quite get it together on a single engine. Let's move on. Okay, just hold on 1 minute. Before we move on to the next aircraft, I want to share something I'm really excited about. Mark your calendars. Next week on April 3rd, I'm going to be at Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo doing a live stream. This is the largest air show in Florida. Join me as I go on the hunt for some of the coolest aircraft at the show. I'll be exploring the Warbird area, vintage aircraft, home builds, and ultralights. And who knows, I might even come up with some new ideas for my channel. Just click the link in the video to bookmark the event. Okay, now let's move on to the next jet. Here's another one that tried to break into the executive jet market on one single engine, the VisionAire Vantage. Imagine trying to compete with the Cessna Citation Jet, one of the most successful business jets in history, but with a bold twist, a single engine design. That was the vision behind the VisionAire Vantage, an aircraft that promised affordability, efficiency, and simplicity in a market dominated by twin-engine jets. To achieve this, the Vantage relied on a single Williams FJ44 turbofan, producing 1,900 pounds of thrust. Just think about all the cost savings in fuel and maintenance if you only have one engine to feed. On paper, the Vantage had all the right numbers, with a range of 1,500 miles, a max cruise speed of 375 knots, and a service ceiling of 41,000 feet. It was designed to perform just as well as its twin-engine rivals. To ensure the aircraft's aerodynamics were cutting edge, legendary aerospace engineer Burt Rtuan was brought in to refine the prototype's design. And if you need to turn an ambitious concept into reality, Rtuan is the guy to call. The Vantage first flew in 1996, but right off the bat it was mired with handling problems, and the Vantage went through many redesigns to address its problems, which naturally bloated development costs. In 2003, the company was under major debt and declared bankruptcy. Surprisingly, a nice looking website seems to be promoting the Vantage, so perhaps someone is looking to kick production back up again? If anyone has any news on the Vantage, drop them in the comments below. And with that, let's move on to the next jet that used a DIY approach for affordability. The Maverick TwinJet 1500. This is one jet that took a DIY approach to private aviation.
Well, this is a Maverick TwinJet. It's an experimental aircraft built from a kit.
A kit like I used to build when I was a kid.
Unlike your typical business jets from big name manufacturers, this one was designed as a kit-built aircraft, meaning buyers had to assemble it themselves. The idea, of course, was to make private jet ownership more affordable and accessible by cutting out the manufacturing process and also chopping off any certification costs. It was a bold concept, but as you might guess, things didn't quite go according to plan. Just ask Jim Beatty how that worked out for him. The TwinJet 1500 was to be powered by a pair of GE T58 turbojet engines, the same ones used in the Bell UH-1 Huey helicopter. These engines weren't certified, and neither was the plane, so this rather odd engine choice was certainly saving buyers a bunch of money. The TwinJet 1500 had a max cruise speed of 350 knots and a service ceiling of 31,000 feet, which put it in the same performance range as entry-level business jets. For a plane you could build in your garage, those numbers were pretty impressive. The company claimed to have several deposits for Maverick jet kits, but then tragedy struck. In 2003, one of the prototypes crashed, dealing a devastating hit to the Maverick's credibility. Safety concerns mounted, and confidence in the design plummeted. Any momentum the TwinJet 1500 had quickly faded, and with that, the Maverick joined the ranks of other failed experimental jet designs. Ever heard of the Aerostar? The Aerostar is a legend in the aviation world, known as one of the fastest piston twin aircraft ever built. Pilots loved its sleek design, incredible speed, and unmatched performance in its class. So, naturally, the idea of turning it into a jet seemed like the next logical step. If the piston-powered Aerostar could already reach speeds of 260 knots, imagine what a jet-powered version could do. That's where the Aerostar Jet concept was born. The Aerostar was designed by the legendary Ted Smith, who was also involved with the A-26 bomber in World War II and later designed the Aero Commander and Jet Commander. Ted Smith envisioned a jet-powered Aerostar as early as the 1970s, but his death in 1976 also spelled the death of his jet project. After Piper acquired the Aerostar line in 1978, they focused on piston-powered models and never attempted a jet conversion. Once Piper shut down the Aerostar line in 1984, the rights to the Aerostar were bought by old employees of Ted Smith. An Aerostar Aircraft Corporation was formed as a way to breathe life back into old Aerostars. And soon, Ted Smith's vision of a jet-powered Aero Commander would be brought back to life. The plan was to equip the Aerostar with twin Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines with 1,500 pounds of thrust each, the same ones used in Cessna Mustang. The low-slung engines were far from conventional, at least compared to most business jets. I wonder if Ted Smith drew some inspiration from a much earlier jet design. With this power upgrade, the Aerostar Jet was expected to cruise at speeds exceeding 400 knots, making it one of the fastest small business jets of its time. With a projected range of 1,500 miles, it would have been a fuel-efficient and cost-effective alternative to larger corporate jets, although a bit tighter on the inside. But as exciting as the concept is, there seems to be no further updates on the Aerostar Jet, not even a mention on the Aerostar's own website. So if anyone knows what happened to this amazing little jet, let me know in the comments below. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Jet's feature today. If you like this video, I highly recommend you check out the first video of this series. And if there's anything you want me to cover in an upcoming video, just drop it in the comments below, and I'll see you next one.